Just look at what I got for only 36 bucks. This isn't some ancient junk on a 775 socket. This is a more or less still decently relevant PC. But not just any PC. It's what's known as an SFF, or small form factor computer. And it's called Lenovo M920s. Sounds like some kind of a weapon, doesn't it? Just imagine, for that price, we get an SFF case, SFF power supply, SFF optical drive, a 1-watt SFF subwoofer, even the USBs are SFF. And all of this fits into just 8.4 liters of volume. I mean, even the factory protective film is still on it. Despite the tiny volume of this case, I plan to give it a proper upgrade. Because, obviously, there's a lot of potential for improvement here. Let me quickly show you what it looks like inside and what it's packing. As you can see, there isn't much room for a big graphics card, but trust me, we'll fix that. This case actually has some pretty clever engineering, like the front panel, which opens sideways like a gate. RAM-wise, it's not much, just a single 8GB DDR4 stick. I'll leave it alone for now. There are SATA and PCIe NVMe slots. The power supply is proprietary, obviously, and outputs up to 210 watts on 12 volts, which is more than enough for our needs. Even though we've got 2 PCIe slots, only the top one has X16 lanes. The lower one only has 4, as you can see. But I already know which GPU I can squeeze in here, especially since we draw power from the SATA cables. And the first upgrade I'll do is adding a 1TB NVMe SSD. It costs more than the whole PC, but totally worth it considering the system isn't that old. There was supposed to be a mounting bracket for the SSD, but looks like whoever assembled this PC just forgot to install it. So the SSD will be securely held in place with wires. Let's hope it doesn't run off somewhere. Now, let's at least check if this thing actually works. I haven't even powered it on yet. Here's what a normal-sized PC looks like compared to our tiny 8.4-liter small boy. The difference is pretty wild. The DVD drive is probably working, but who cares? As for the CPU, you couldn't get any weaker. Pentium Gold G5400, 2 cores, 4 threads, socket 1151 V2. It scores a humiliating 1,000 points in benchmarks. But hey, it's super energy efficient. Only 21 watts of power consumption. I'm honestly scared to try any modern games on this crazy little iGPU, so I warmed it up with Minecraft, and with single-channel RAM, it was painful to play. Not only is the CPU gasping for air, but the memory is completely maxed out. So I added another 8GB stick. Now we've got dual-channel 16GB. Much better. The RAM is still fully used, and it's still not comfortable to play, but FPS has doubled, so hey, we're making progress, baby! You know what this PC can definitely handle even without an upgrade? Learning to code. By the way, did you know that ChatGPT models are written in Python? That's why I want to share a platform I really enjoyed using, boot.dev. It's a site where you can learn programming from scratch, in Python, Go, or JavaScript, for example. I tried the Python course myself, and honestly, it's pretty fun. At first, you feel like the main character in Idiocracy. Fix the bug where the player gains health instead of losing it. And you're like, should I replace the plus with a minus? But level by level, the challenges get more complex, and it really pulls you in. Boot.dev uses ideas from game design, XP, levels, achievements, and it works! Unlike many other courses, here you start writing code from the very first lesson. It's not a series of video lectures. It's an interactive experience. And if you get stuck, you can ask for help from Boots, the AI wizard bear. I got stuck on one task, asked him for help, and he didn't give me the answer, just clever hints through questions. Very sneaky, but helpful. Oh, and if you're not sure yet, you can try everything for free in guest mode. But if you decide to go deeper, here's my discount code for 25% off your first payment. What about the PC? Click the link in the description, try out boot.dev, and let me know what you think. You've seen the performance. It's good enough for Minecraft, but definitely not enough for modern games. So it's time to upgrade this PC. And luckily, we got the parts to do it. But before that, let me show you some of the cool engineering quirks inside this case. And while we're at it, we'll clean out the dust and finally give it a proper wash, because it arrived to me disgustingly dirty. Even though there's very little room in the case, the cable management's actually pretty decent. Now, it's not the quietest PC ever, let's be honest, but the noise is tolerable. That's because this thing has a turbine in it, like the wild Radeon cards from 2013. The heatsink is just a basic standard one. You could replace it, but there's no real point. The motherboard only supports up to 65-watt CPUs, so no, I'm not putting an i9 in here. Not because it's hot, but because it's expensive. If it were cheaper, I'd figured out how to cool it and the VRMs on this board, no question. Despite the small size of the case, the motherboard is basically ATX in form, and it takes up all the space. And to remove it, you'll need some serious ingenuity. I spent 3 hours solving this puzzle, and then suddenly, it clicked. Look, if I wasn't this smart, there's no way I'd have figured it out. Turns out you need to slide the back plate sideways, so no one steals your motherboard, and still the board wouldn't come out of the case. Damn it, how do you even get it out? I tried every method, except the right one. Turns out there's a front plate, meaning the ports are soldered on both sides of the motherboard. Which is actually pretty cool, because with the headphone jack being so well shielded, there will be minimum interference. Finally, the board comes out nice and easy. And in case you didn't know, this PC even has a built-in 1-watt subwoofer. That's a big win, because, as they say, good sound doesn't grow on trees. And hey, when it's free, it's for me. So let's just say, thank you for existing. Now, let's move on to the SATA cables, which were held down nice and tight. Well, were. The case is now fully disassembled. Just a couple more parts left, and then it's swimming time. For example, the power supply, which I regretted taking apart because I almost choked to death on the dust while cleaning it out. But I had to do it since this PSU is going to carry the heaviest load today. And I'd rather not have it catch fire in the middle of a benchmark. As for that little stump of a CPU and its future, I looked at it and thought I could sell it and be $7 richer. And then grab a real gaming CPU, boxed from AMD's lineup. As they say, best bang for the buck on this platform. I paid just $30 for an i5-8500. 6 whole cores, no hyperthreading. But if you want hyperthreading and more cores, you're already looking at around $100, and that's just not worth it for the performance boost. So yeah, this was the best option I could find. And honestly, here's my take. If you're building a gaming PC, you don't need anything higher than an i5, even on such an old platform. Because obviously, if you're buying hardware this old, you're probably looking to save as much money as possible. I mean, if only we could give it the power its father could never dream of. But hey, you can't let good stuff go to waste. You gotta save on everything you see. A penny here, a penny there, and boom! You got a down payment on your own place. Then you flip this PC for double the price. Easy. This is my computer. There are many like it, but this one is mine. My computer is my best friend. It is my life. Without me, my computer is useless. Without my computer, I am useless. My computer is a person, just like me, because it is my life. Everything's now perfectly clean, beautiful, which means everything goes back together super easily. Perfect. We're putting the motherboard back in. I think it's time to bring out the heavy artillery. Well, maybe not just yet. We'll only use that if our RTX 4060 low profile doesn't cut it. Yeah, I know. Not exactly a budget GPU when you compare it to how much I paid for the whole PC, but we don't have a lot of choices. This is one of the most powerful cards in its weight class. The RTX 5060 hadn't launched at the time of filming, and besides, even though it's also low profile, it consumes 30 watts more based on tests. And we got some strict power limitations here. I bought it for $280. Expensive? Definitely. But it's modern, current, and fairly energy efficient. A nearly gaming class graphics card that, at first glance, fits our case perfectly. But of course, there's a catch. The side flap gets in the way of the GPU. We'll have to modify it slightly so it can fully close. I'll mark this spot and make a cut. Honestly, I probably should have done this before I washed the case, but oh well. Hopefully there won't be too much aluminum shavings. Perfect. Now I'll just break the rest off by hand. Too lazy to cut it properly. Beautiful. The flap now closes completely and nothing is in the way. I'm proud of this one. Now, all that's left is to put everything back together and show you how we'll power a 4060 using just a 210-watt PSU, which, by the way, has proprietary cables for everything except CPU power. For those who don't know, any GPU, even the crazy ones with 3 power cables, always draws the first 75 watts from the PCI Express slot and only pulls from the auxiliary connectors when needed. I also virtually sold that 8GB stick of RAM for $13 and bought 2 sticks, 16 gigabytes each. So for $40, we now have 32 gigabytes of memory. Back to the GPU. It draws up to 120 watts max. If we subtract the 75 watts from PCIe, we still need to get another 45 watts. For example, from this SATA to 8-pin adapter, it costs next to nothing, about $3.50. Now, let's do the math. 65 plus 120 equals 185 watts total. Add another 20 watts for everything else, which is kinda pushing it for a PSU like this. But in practice, either the CPU or the GPU never draws full power at the same time. So it's not like we have a safety margin. But the PSU should be able to handle it, especially since I've undervolted the GPU without any performance loss and I've stress tested the PC. No shutdowns. So, in actual games, we should be fine. Let's start with the latest release, Doom: The Dark Ages. All graphics settings are maxed out, DLSS is set to ultra performance, just to see how far the CPU can go in this game. And as you can see, we're getting well over 60 FPS almost constantly, which really surprised me considering the price and 7-year age of this CPU. Frame times are smooth and I didn't see a single stutter. Here are the settings for the GPU test. 2K balanced DLSS. And here's the main problem with this GPU, very limited memory. If it runs out, you simply can't play, as you can clearly see. But I tweaked the settings so we've got both high graphics and enough VRAM, 2K DLSS on quality, and boom! Beautiful visuals with a smooth, playable frame rate that never drops below 50 frames per second. Then I tried launching the updated GTA 5 on max settings, and I was honestly surprised how well the GPU handled it. Sure, we're getting a stable 80 FPS, but I expected more from this CPU in a game this old. Now, here's where both the CPU and GPU kinda struggled. Kingdom Come, Deliverance 2. We're getting 50 FPS and it's not very stable. Sometimes the GPU isn't even fully loaded, despite running the game at max settings in 2K. Still, it's playable, just not super smooth. And just listen to our 1-watt subwoofer doing its job in this PC. Absolute beast! Tried the new Oblivion on ultra settings, 2K DLSS on quality, and yeah, basically unplayable. Even switching to DLSS balance didn't help. The game is just too demanding for any system, so your only option is to play it on medium with frame generation. Indiana Jones. The visuals were gorgeous. FPS was a bit unstable though because of the weak GPU, so I couldn't really test the CPU. Look at these settings. In The Last of Us Part 2, the system actually holds up quite well. However, as you can see, even with high FPS, the CPU is clearly maxed out, sitting at 100% usage constantly. There are moments where the FPS dips really hard. I couldn't tell whether it was the CPU bottlenecking or the GPU because during those drops, both were at 100% load. But for about 75% of the game, it runs totally fine, like in this scene, right here. Still, the CPU's full potential isn't being realized. So let's throw in a GPU that gets more FPS in 4K than the 4060 does in 1080p. I'm talking about one of the biggest graphics cards in the world, the RTX 4090. The plan for modifying the case is as simple as it gets. Measure once, cut 7 times. We'll be removing unnecessary parts of the side panel and case overall. There's gonna be a lot of shaving, so we better take the motherboard out first. Also, here's what I'm thinking. This spot, right here, that's gonna be the bottom of the GPU. And that's a problem, because the GPU will be sucking up all the airflow, leaving the power supply with no cooling at all since its fan is set to intake mode. I think it's better to flip it over to exhaust mode. Theoretically, it won't cool any worse that way. There's not much space inside, and air should flow just fine from the side. Plus, judging by the layout of the heat sinks inside the PCU, it actually looks like side airflow might be better. Something like that. Well, hopefully I won't saw my hand off in the process. There's gonna be a lot of aluminum shavings, just like I promised, but it's worth it. I mean, the GPU weighs 2.5 kilograms. Where it's hard to use a metal saw, I switched to the rotary tool. Hopefully, nothing flies into the camera lens this time. Last time that happened, I trashed the lens on my previous camera and then successfully sold it anyway. But this one, 10 times more expensive, so selling it will be a bit trickier. All right, the side flap is now half cut through and slowly losing its legitimacy in this build. Just a few more bits to deal with, then we can move on to the front panel, which I'll torture using a different bit. Awesome little tool, no regrets buying it. I mean, I only use it once a year, but still! Honestly, I felt a little bad cutting the front panel, but the GPU needs space, so yeah, cutting continues. Later I'll glue it back together with some super glue and just say some angry beavers chewed on it. Very angry ones. Alright, time to test fit the components. Okay, looks like the flap doesn't block the GPU. That means we can start putting the PC back together. Or not. It looks like we've hit a problem I didn't anticipate. The GPU doesn't fully fit into the slot because the back end is too big. See that? An easy solution would be to just cut part of the GPU off, but I thought, Nah, let's go with something much harder, and therefore more fun. I'll cut 2 holes on the opposite side of the case so the GPU can poke out the back too. Step by step, cut by cut, with constant test fitting, I ended up doing this. And then this, because the GPU still didn't fit quite right. But now we're solid! The GPU looks like it's been here its entire life. The latch is getting in the way a little now, but no big deal. I'll just remove it real quick. There we go! One more thing, I want the bottom panel to act as a GPU support bracket because otherwise it's gonna sag hard, and we don't want that. So I cut out a little support column on the bottom, which theoretically should hold the GPU up. Perfect! Couldn't have done it better if I tried. And here's what the case lost after our upgrade. Or rather, what it gained. The only thing it lost was a few extra kilos. Now this is going to be a PC. Can't wait to see how it all turns out. Everything is fitting together perfectly. The support bracket's doing its job. Here it is. My finest work yet. Looks exactly like I imagined. Disgustingly perfect. The card sticks out 1/2 meter forward and another 1/2 meter sideways. But you're probably wondering, how the hell are you gonna power this monster? Simple. I bought another SFF power supply to help with that. It even has a power button. 8 amps on 12 volts. That gives us about 200 watts to play with. It also has more SATA and Molex cables, so I managed to get 2 8-pin connectors for the GPU. I hooked those up to this 600 watt rated adapter for the GPU. To start the power supply, I just shorted the green and black wires. Now, when we apply power, it turns on automatically. So, power the GPU PSU first, then the main PC, and everything worked. Of course, I undervolted the GPU because realistically, we only have 275 watts to feed it. But even at max undervolt, it still seems to be drawing more than 275 watts. The screen goes black every time I launch a game. So, I had to hook up a regular ATX PSU, and to be honest, it looks even more aesthetic now because the PC is lying on its side. But hey, now we've got so much power overhead, we can max out any game in 4K. Like I said, with max undervolting, the card still draws 310 watts. That's why the small PSU wasn't enough. Should have just bought a proper 500 watt SFF PSU. Now, if you remove the power limit and overclock the GPU, you can get 60 to 70 FPS in 4K. No DLSS needed. And in really heavy scenes, even the CPU starts to bottleneck, as you can see right here. In Kingdom Come, even in native 4K on max settings, the card's only running at 50% load, which means we should have been getting double the FPS. 80 FPS in Indiana Jones, as you can see. And by the way, in The Last of Us Part 2, all the stuttering is gone. So yeah, turns out the bottleneck was VRAM with the 4060. Now the CPU, even under full load, pumps out 80 to 100 FPS. The game runs super smooth. So, I hope this video was fun to watch. If it was, smash that like button, share it with your friends, and thanks for watching!